So I want to talk to you about the skill and just a little backstory on this. I almost think the company sometimes does us disservice. Bobby and I have been in this industry for 32 years and we were taught to talk opportunity the whole time. We were not taught to sell product. And I understand, we needed to sell collagen, we needed to sell GLP-1, but we can talk to people about opportunity and use product as a fallback, or we can talk about product. The thing that we need to build is our skill to get to the point that we know what people want. So, we all have the same products. We all have the same compensation plan. We all have the same company. Do you ever wonder why some people are more successful than others? I mean, sure, maybe they can talk to more people, but maybe they're talking to those people a little bit different. And this is where I want you, we get the privilege of having great experience because people put us on three-way calls and the new person doesn't even know why they're on the call. So, we get an abundance of coming from all different angles with that. And that's kind of what I want to go over with you tonight. Our first mission is how well do we know the prospect? And I'll give you an example. I put our Jeep there. So often we are on the beach and somebody says biohacker, or they even just like the Jeep. And, they're like, oh, like the Jeep. Bobby's always quick to say, we won that from our company. We got it for free. And they're like, really? So there are some times that we need to figure out how to start a conversation with people when we're out and about. And you've heard us before when we're talking about, if we go to happy hour, we go to happy hour on purpose just to meet people, not to get drunk, not to eat the appetizers, not to just get out of the house, but it's our game plan to be around as many people as possible, whether it's pickleball, whether it's church, whatever it might be. We're always trying to figure out who we can go about talking to, but then we need to do our work as far as figuring out what their pain point is. And I'm going to talk about how to really dive down to a pain point, not just I need to make money, because that's not enough there. We want to find out what it is. How did it start? Did it just start? Has it been a long problem? Like, wait, have you been overweight for 10 years or have you been overweight for 5 months? Did it just come on? Did it come on because of stress or poor eating or staying home? Did COVID do it? There's so many questions we can ask somebody. Why does it still exist? What have you tried to do about it? And I'm just going to use weight loss because it's easy. You can use money, you can use anything, but what have you tried to do about it? Have you tried to go on different diets, or have you tried to change the way you're eating? Or, why does it still exist? Are you not exercising? So all these things can be questions to you really need to get down to why something is going on with somebody, whether it's weight, whether it's finances. And I'm going to talk about relationships or community. There's a lot of people out there since COVID that are just lost. One of the other things I'll do is I'll ask about the family. Their kids don't live anywhere near them. They haven't seen their kids, they don't have good friends, so we always have to have, our vision open for the person, because they can be looking at many, many different things, not always just our, collagen or our weight loss product. So we're not always just talking about a business. And actually, we're not talking about a business. We're not talking about a product. What we're talking about is being a solution for somebody. We're a problem solver. So, people really aren't out looking for businesses. When we talk to people, it's not about a business. It's about, what do they want out of life? If it's a product, great. If they're unhappy with their skin or they need to lose weight, we can help them with that. But we really are problem solvers. We're dream builders. We're hope builders. We're trying to give people a better way out there, because there's so many people that are just going day to day, 9 to 5, and they don't realize that there really is another way. So this is where our testimonies, our stories, creating belief, sharing a vision are so, so important. And I would say this is double, triple the reason you want to be going to Dallas, because you want to hear all these different stories. It's not always my story. My story is not always a perfect fit. I can't tell you how many of your stories I use. I use all of your stories, how we met, how we got started, what you've accomplished, whether it be product or whether it be opportunity. But that's how you create vision for a person. That's how you solve problems. That's how you get rapport with this person. So do you ever notice this? And I think probably the ladies, I'm sorry, guys, can relate to this a little bit better. If you've ever filled out a weight loss challenge online, they not only ask you how much weight you've lost, but why do you want to lose that weight? Is there a special event coming up? Maybe it's a class reunion or something. And so you can envision yourself going back to that class reunion or that family wedding where you haven't seen everybody in a few years and you've put on a few pounds and you want to lose those pounds. So the vision really isn't the amount of pounds on the scale at this point. It's you looking how you want to look and being able to wear the clothes that you want. So I hope that I love that illustration that, they do with these weight loss challenges. But you know what? I always say to people at our age, and most of us are, we're kind of all in the same age bracket there. It's been decades of people we know. You have contacts in your phone, more contacts than you've forgotten. And everybody out there, particularly our age, number one thing is health. I mean, it's just downright scary. I Googled a little bit before. Do you know that the average person between 65 and 69 is on 15 different medications? We can't relate to that unless we ask what they're taking, why they're taking. It's a 15. 80 to 84, it's 18. So you can say, well, it's not really a money concern, but it is a money concern. Even if they only have to pay $20 for each copay at 15, that's still $300 last time I did the math. That starts to add up when you're on a fixed income. So, health, wealth, and community become big as we get older. And, this is like the ideal thing. Not only do we have the community, but we can do this at our leisure. Who can't pick up the phone and talk to people? So, we have three really big markets, but sometimes we need to remind people that they are literally trading time for dollars. And there's so many people out there working, even a lot of professionals. You think about, we talk to accountants, we talk to doctors, we talk to business owners. I can remember when Bobby owned his business owned him. He worked at least 80 hours a week, never, ever saw our oldest son. He left for work before our oldest son got up, and he came home after he was, in bed, and he worked a good half a day, almost a full day on Saturday. So he really had no relationship with our first son, unlike the relationship he had with the two. And then I shouldn't even wrote residual. I should have wrote repeat income month after month, because when you make people aware of that, it's, they're pretty excited about what's going on, particularly as we're aging. So, health is a concern, and also people being isolated. So what I'm saying is find their real pain point, find their frustration. What do they really need or want? The first thing people tell you is not it. You really need to let people talk. And if you just ask little questions here and there and let them talk, they'll tell you what is going on. Are they frustrated or scared about being overweight, being sick, being broke, retirement, childcare? Lack of appreciation from an employer is also big, being away from home too much. But again, get people talking, and they will tell you more than you need to know, but you've got to really let them talk. Ask a lot of questions. This is how I always start a conversation. It's either, what do you do for a living? I'll look at an area code and I'll say, have you always lived there? Somewhere in my, I don't get right into activation, but somewhere in my conversation, I was going to say spiel, but somewhere in my conversation, I'll ask, do you take supplements like a multivitamin or a vitamin D or a C, so they can kind of relate to what we're doing. If you do, why, what being overweight bothers you. These are all the things, these are the questions that we're going to ask, not just how much weight do you want to lose, 10 pounds. Well, that's not enough. Why do you want to lose the 10 pounds? How do you think you'll feel once you lose the 10 pounds? We have to get more feeling in what we're selling. It's not just a business. It's not just a product. Again, we're trying to be problem solvers. So, people must feel understood and listened to. And I thought this was interesting. I actually stole this from one of the other groups in LifeVantage. 82% of people buy from network marketers that they feel connected to, that you listened to, that you had a conversation. That's why people do so well on Facebook. They get into Messenger and they have conversations again and again with people, and then people wind up buying from them. It's all that knowing about their family and what's going on. And sometimes it's tough. I got to tell you, I had a lady today that she's got her grandkids, and I know that they're going to court tomorrow, and I know the daughter will be there. And I was kind of like, well, do you want them or not? I mean, it was kind of an awkward question. I wasn't sure if she really wanted to keep them, or what the situation was. But it shows you care when you ask these questions to figure out what's really going on in people's lives. Okay, so this is what you need to know the answers to as you're going through. It doesn't matter, business opportunity, whatever thing you're trying to solve. They're hoping that this might help whatever it is their need, their dream, their nightmare, whatever it is that's going on. The second thing is, can I do it? Big fear, big lack of self-esteem out there. So people are like, I don't know if I could do this. I mean, how many times have you heard, I can't sell? And really, is there any part of what we do selling? But people are quick to say, I can't sell. How much time do I need? So you kind of need to be aware of all these things that they're going, they're going 90 miles an hour through their head with what they're thinking is going on. So I'm going to let Bobby take this part over. Do you remember? You used to say this all the time and you don't say it anymore. It was 300 years of picture.
Yeah, when people would get into an example of the income, and I said, we took a chance getting involved with a mentor in a company when I lost my picture frame business when it went bankrupt, and I said over the 25 years we earned over $15 million. I said it would have taken 300 years of making picture frames to earn what we've earned. And I think that visual worked for a lot of people. It's like the only time you hear about anyone living 300 years is in the Bible. I mean, it's like they definitely related to that. So, April.
Yeah. So you can see that's very visual. So you need to get something like that. Have them face how long are they going to have to work at their present job to retire comfortably. A lot of people, it's not. They're just not saving enough money every month or year in order to be able to retire. What about the cost of medicines and activation? And more than that, and I think everybody knows, because they say that 1 in 5 people does not take their medicines because they don't have the money, their prescriptions. So it's more than just the money there, though. How are they going to feel? What are the side effects of those medicines? Are they tired of taking medicines and stuff? So there's all this thing for taking care of your health as well, which is so important. But this is the gap between reality and the dream. And this is where you have to get strong. And this is what you're kind of, for lack of a better word, selling them. If you take these products, you're going to look better, you're going to feel better. If I do this business, I'll have more self-confidence because I won't be worried about money. If I start earning more money, I can provide for my family. For men are a lot of times, their status is money, so they'll feel better if they build a big business. What about parents, moms? What about the fact of, leaving your kids in daycare and, just all of that goes on? Building this business means that you can be there for those games. You can be there for school. This is where you have to tie it in. They're kind of thinking they want these things and they may visualize them, but you've got to kind of tie it together and say, what, we get you active in this business. You can start to, and I always say you can start taking days off your work week. You can work 4 days maybe. And I ask if that's an option with what they're doing. And I said, more time, you can be with your kids, if you can have flex time, and you just got to kind of dial down that dream for them and put it out. It's not really based on, product or anything like that. It's giving them what they need. So, this is where the before and afters with product come in, because people see that they're not asking all these questions and stuff. Travel pictures showing lifestyle, like what Dee's doing, time freedom. People start seeing that, they're like, I want to travel like she does. I want to be all over the place. Recognition posts. Others having success just shows whether it's yours or not. Remember when I said it doesn't have to be your story, you can share that went on in your organization, your group, your company. You can put that out there that, look at all these people on a trip, from my company or whatever, or, recognition, people making money and stuff. So, it works. And we know it works if you work. And so I always tell people, but sometimes you do have to show them the money, particularly with men. They want to see the money. But you know what? You know this. You really know this. You know how much when somebody sells a package of GLP-1, right away they can start earning $20 on that, but they can earn upwards of $50 on that. So you give them that range right away. And then when Bobby does the numbers, you have 30 customers, that's $1,200 a month. So you can play those numbers with them very quickly just to let them know, and then show them the income statement if you need to. So, you can show them money if it comes down to, but I caution you, don't give them anything they don't ask for. Sometimes people aren't that money motivated, or they just don't really understand that. And a picture is so much better, but people are buying the dream. But again, they need to be rewarded around the way. It's a long-term journey, but short-term wins will keep them in the game. That's why they email us new consultants. It's an emotional win when you get that little text message and you get that email. It's pretty exciting. So what do I have to do? These are kind of the working rules. I always find out how much time somebody has. What are they looking for, just to make sure it's realistic. If they're going to tell me 2 hours a week and they want to make $1 million in the next year, that's not realistic, But I tell everybody 2 reach outs a day, have to be doing 2 reach outs a day. I just don't understand that, not whether you have to go out and physically meet somebody, at a gym or pickleball or whatever it might be, however you need to do. If you have to go hang out, we went to the mall for the first time Friday night, and I think it was Friday night, and it was packed. I think people are back in the mall. We were like, where are all these people doing here? So we were pretty surprised at that. But this is the part I want you to know. And I don't know who I stole that first line from, but at first you stink. We all stink at anything new. Get over it. You can have many, many do-overs in this business, and we'll show you how to do those do-overs. And then you get good, and then you get great at it. So to everyone, it looks easy. They probably think, oh, it's just easy because you've been doing it. But because you do it again and again, it does seem easy. But every day is another day, and you just continue getting better. But again, you need to attend the trainings and the events. That's where you get the stories. This is where you get the ammunition to build your business and build it big, with all these different trainings on how to talk to people and success stories that people are having. But this is the takeaway. Sometimes it seems like it may be a slow boat at times, but think of the lifetime value, compensation and sense of purpose. Helping somebody get what they want, of a new consultant or a new customer who is successful because you helped them. It's huge. I was going through some of my customers and doing birthday notifications, and there are literally people that spend 2-3 months. These customers have been around for the 32 years we've been in business. I mean, it's crazy. If I were to think of how much money I've made with some of these people. I look at Jaya. Jaya's on here. I mean, Jaya's around, is it 25, 30 years? I don't know. She was here when Chad was a baby, and he's 30 now. So, she's been around forever, and which is a good thing, Jaya. Don't take it the wrong way. But, look at the money that we've been able to make on her, and so many others of you as well. So anyway, I hope that helps you. I tried to do that fast. I'll go ahead and stop this share. So hopefully it'll let me stop. Okay, there we go. Okay, so hopefully that helps you with just talking to people, and just do a deep dive with whatever they're telling you. Really figure out what's bothering them. Don't just take the first thing. So Bobby, back to you.
April a hand for that. Was that good info or what?
Oh, thanks.
I'm